All right, so you've started a career in cybersecurity. Sounds pretty easy, right? Or maybe you feel stuck, looking at an impossible mountain to climb with no clue of how to find your footing. But fortunately, you've stumbled across Scaling the Wall, a podcast that breaks down the cybersecurity journey into manageable steps. I'm your host, Will Brooks. In each episode, I'll be your guide as we interact with others who are living and breathing cybersecurity every single day. We'll hear their stories, learn from their experiences, and gather those golden nuggets of wisdom they've picked up along the way. No jargon, no hype, just real talk about what it takes to build a successful career in this exciting field from those who have paved the way. So grab your gear and get ready to climb as we scale the wall of cybersecurity together.
I have this groundbreaking belief here. It is specifically the majority of your fulfillment as a person should come from outside of the confines of the four walls of your business. There's obviously a scale, like the more ownership you have in an organization, like in my case where I am one of the owners of the company, it's like I get a lot of fulfillment. It is not only my mission, my vision that I like, it's the thing that I've decided to do, but now I've rallied a whole bunch of people behind me to help. And that has a lot of fulfilling natures. But for people who are not in a position of ownership, the majority of your fulfillment should not come from their work at all, right? You are so much more than not only your skill set, you are so much more than the things that you decide to do and the career that you decide pursuing. There's a whole host of things, whether it's being a part of a family or having a wide, really connected group of friends, or whether that's getting really good at, I don't know, woodworking or anything like that. I'm just choosing hobbies at Ron Swanson at this point. Making bacon.
Well, Ron Swanson didn't really have large groups of friends, but woodworking, yeah, sure.
But woodworking was a hobby. So I personally believe that most of who you are is not what you do at work, most of what your fulfillment should be is not what happens at work either. It should be from other areas of your life. Now, that doesn't need to be the case. Like, you can pursue a career with an extreme amount of ownership and with an extreme amount of work ethic, and you could get a lot of fulfillment out of that. It's just not something that I think is going to be healthy long term. So your question, which was, does it make you a better person? So I have a philosophy that is, people will always pursue what they believe is in their best interest at all times, right? Now, here's the rub about that. You can lie to people about what opportunity actually exists, and so they believe they're pursuing opportunity when they're not. People can lie to themselves about opportunity, so they will pursue things that they fool themselves into believing exist. But what's clear to me is that people do what they believe is in their best interest. And so if I believe that people can get this incredible amount of fulfillment outside of work, including myself, and I create not the space to pursue that fulfillment, but I plan that into how we work together and the hours that we work and why we work certain hours and what we're willing to do. And there's vacation and benefits and salary and PTO baked into all that. If I can allow a person or if my coworkers can pursue who they want to be outside of work, which is by nature, let's say 16 hours of your day anyway, then they'll always believe that the work that we do together is what allows them to pursue all the fulfillment they get outside of work, because it's not a thing that exists, at least in American culture. From what I understand, in European culture, it's much more balanced. But here in American culture, it's like, if you get more than 3 weeks of paid time off, it's like, holy cow. It's like, is your boss like going through some kind of midlife crisis right now? And they're really trying to make sure they don't go to hell. It's like, why are they being so kind to you? It's like, what do you mean why they're being so kind? 3 out of 52 weeks a year is like 5% of your time. It's like, you're telling me it's way more than 5%, isn't it? No, it's about 5%. So I don't know. Yeah.
I think that's a great point. I mean, when I got my first full-time job, my boss looked at me because I hadn't seen most of my college friends in maybe 3 years at that point. And I was like, hey, I want to take a road trip, 4 days, drive up the coast, visit friends. And he was like, oh, well, you don't usually get a week of vacation time until after your first year here. And I was like, a week? And like, it was just this piece where you almost feel like your life becomes your work. and there's no opportunity for anything else. And then I think of my dad, who, I mean, we took vacations as kids and we, growing up, but he worked for a company in New York City, which meant he was getting on the train at 5:30 in the morning to get to his office in the city in time to start his workday, and then he wouldn't get home till 7:30 at night. And it's almost like work took over more than 12 hours of his day, like the commute to work, all those components, to the point where he couldn't, he was exhausted when he get home. So I almost think, my life's a little different. I work from home with a culture that encourages doing activities, taking family time. My wife and I went to the beach last Friday morning before work started, and I started my work day at 8:30, but because I work from home, I was able to do it, right? So it's even not just the time off, but the ways that we are able to work today where those things kind of become a reality. Are there hobbies that interfere with that, though? Like you kind of talked about it jokingly at the beginning, but when I think of hobbies, I also think of like, oh, well, I could theoretically sit down and play a raid on Destiny 2 or World of Warcraft for 3.5 hours. And that's probably not the best use of company time.
I would say a lot of people, when I give them the advice, it's like a company's job is to allow its employees to pursue fulfillment outside of work. They immediately launch to, well, how is anyone ever going to be productive because nobody wants to work? It's like, I think that's a red herring, because what I didn't say was, I'll give you an example through my opinion of unlimited PTO, is that it's BS. It's like, clearly one of two things is happening. Either I'm lying to you or the business is lying to you, because it's not unlimited PTO. And if I were getting hired and they said unlimited PTO, I'd say, great, show me all the rules that I can or cannot take PTO, because they exist. And if you're like, no, it's really unlimited, I'm going to ask for 365 days of PTO the minute I walk in the door. It's like, let's start testing this. It's like clearly a lie. And so I think the red herring that a lot of people immediately run into is, well, clearly people can't be productive. And my response is like, no, I think it's actually, I'm giving space for people to be fulfilled outside of work, but they only get that if they're productive at work. It's like, if you can't be productive here, if you're not a creative and competent individual that can be, at the end of the day, leveraged by the company in order to work productively for our partners, you won't get the opportunity to pursue fulfillment here, because it just doesn't exist. And so
you won't have a job, so you'll have plenty of time to go pursue all the other things that you want to do.
Right. There's a couple of things that come before prioritizing your fulfillment, one of which is, are you competent and creative enough so that we can do things together that people will pay us for? And if that can't happen, the business won't exist. So I'd say hobbies that do get in the way, it's, the rule of thumb is everything's good in moderation. I've definitely sat down. You mentioned World of Warcraft, but I've, blasted 10 hours of a weekend on World of Warcraft one day. Well, you look up at the clock, you're like, oh, it's 7 p.m. already? How did that happen? Holy cow. All I did was, microwave some dino nuggets and, level my hunter through Duskwood. It's like, what did I do with my life? So it's like, there's definitely
9 hours killing warthogs.
Exactly. So there's definitely, you could always overdo it in the same way that you can overdo most things in life. So,
workaholic are a thing, right? It's like the other side of it. I don't think we're necessarily getting at the work-life balance conversation, but people tend to, myself included, I tend to hyperfixate on certain things I've learned, and it's not necessarily even something that I'm super interested in at the time, as much as it's just you get into the zone on something and then like nothing else can pull your attention away. And when I think of like healthy hobbies versus unhealthy hobbies, I kind of lean into that a little bit, where it's like, okay, I like to solder, right? So I have a bunch of old Game Boy Advances that I take apart, I put new screens in, make it so that you can adjust the brightness using button combinations, and put new speakers in, USB-C charging ports, all sorts of stuff, right? So you can make it fun. But if that were to get in the way of me even functioning as an employee, because I'm on a call, but I don't turn my camera on because, man, I want to solder right now, or get in the way of me being a father to a newborn and my wife's taking care of the baby all by herself all day. It's like, those are where the issues really start to come in for me. But I am curious, like, where this connection point is, because there is this piece, right, where it says, hey, I want to make space for my employees to be able to pursue the things they love. And how do you fold that back over now over how that might make them a better employee at your company? So now they're pursuing something they love doing. They take joy in fishing. They take joy in napping, whatever. But how does that then motivate them to work harder at the company? What's your philosophy there?
I have a general philosophy that people who are happier will provide a better service for your clients in every single way. And I could choose a really stupid, simple one. It's like if you have a customer service rep or whatever you call the customer service wing of your organization, if they're just a generally grumpy individual because they're incredibly unhappy and unfulfilled, it's like, what kind of experience is your client going to get when they work with them? Whereas if you take a very fulfilled individual who has opportunity to pursue everything they'd like, they're happy, they're not worried about their health, they're taking time off with their family and their friends whenever they'd like, within reason, I think you'd arrive at a client that's going to get a way better service as a result, and a way better perpetuation of your culture and your brand and your vision and the experience you'd like to leave them with. And then I think that can boil back to virtually any position in your company. Obviously, the ones that are more client facing, it'll be way more prevalent in, it'll be way more observable. Like even in sales, it's like everyone has always met a curmudgeon-y sales individual. But what would happen if you met a sales individual that was like the most personable individual you'd ever met? And I don't think, I think you can operate outside. I think you can pretend to be happy for a while. You can pretend to be fulfilled. I think at some point the mask comes off because it's just a hard thing to do. So that's my philosophy. And TBD, if it's the right one, if it's the most productive one, but I'm certainly willing to try to find out.
I also feel like the encouragement of having your employees pursue hobbies or things that they're actually, I do think there's this other epidemic in our world today of people get off work and they peruse social media, they peruse TikTok, they go on YouTube, they spend all their time consuming information. So they spend all day at work and then they go home and they're tired, so they consume, right? They just consume media, they consume content, they consume likes and comments and like all that kind of stuff. And they're not actually doing anything to produce with their mind something outside of their work. So it's almost like they become drones when they go home. And I remember when I was working as a math teacher, I overheard a conversation between a student and a teacher on something similar, where the teacher was like, "So what do you do for fun?" And the teacher said, or the student effectively said, "Well, I play video games with my friends, and that's about it." And the teacher's like, "Okay, that's great. Why don't you try making something or doing something?" And I do wonder if there's more of an encouragement that needs to happen around that.
There's something to be said about that, creating versus consuming, and the inherent value that has, not only in yourself but also in in the world in general. I'll describe a conversation I had with my dad when I was in college, as he came home from college for a break, probably spring break or something, and he said, "Did you have fun this week?" I was like, "Nope, not a single bit of fun." And he's like, "Did you have I was like, "I haven't had fun this week, this month, this quarter, this year. I haven't had fun at all." He's like, "Then why are you doing this?" And I said, "Because this has been the most fulfilling thing I've ever done, is study this intensely and understand it and try to get to know it." And so there is a bit of, if your job exhausts you mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, if it drains you, it's a really good sign that, no matter how much fulfillment you allow others to pursue outside of work, they're not getting enough from their work in general, that it's just going to be a gaping hole in their life and in their value as a person. Choose an interesting question, choose a problem that you think would be really cool to solve, ever weird or wacky or wild you think that is, and go learn. And that was very intentional, because it comes from a place of, unless there's some modicum of fulfillment that you can gather out of this to begin with, it's never going to work long term. Sure, the salary's going to be really great. I promise. The salaries in cybersecurity are way better than most other industries, but it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be fulfilling. You're not going to enjoy it. You're going to get burnt out.
Scaling the Wall is brought to you by FifthWall Solutions, a cyber insurance wholesaler wholly focused on bridging the gap between cyber insurance and cybersecurity, making it more affordable, accessible, and understandable. If you're an MSP tired of last-minute insurance apps from your clients, or an agent looking for an easier way to write good coverage, Make your way over to FifthWallSolutions.com to learn more about what it means to partner. This podcast is written and produced by me, Will Brooks. Find me on LinkedIn. There are a lot of memes to be found. And I hope you'll tune in next time as we continue to scale the wall of cybersecurity together.